Live from the Heart and Mind studios in beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota, it's another episode of Seriously Mental with Chris Shaw. Tonight's guest, as always, Seriously Mental is filmed in front of a live studio audience. Member. Now, please welcome your host, comedian, and peer support specialist, Chris Shaw.
You're live. Go ahead. Quit standing. Oh boy. Hey, good evening. Welcome to another episode, Tuesday. We're seriously, I guess. The show where we talk about serious issues around mental health and suicide prevention and recovery. And we try to have a little fun. Okay. Tonight we're going to have fun. There's a couple of friends of mine who are going to be guests tonight, and that's always exciting. We're talk a little bit about alcohol and drug recovery and addiction and things along those lines. And I know for me, as somebody who has a dual diagnosis with both mental illness and substance use disorder, I'm getting distracted. It's like squirrel. Your door, for gosh sakes. What's going on in there? Boy, that just stepped all over that punchline. Being dual diagnosis, so I have dealt with my share of alcohol and drug issues over my lifetime, and you know what? Drinking for me was an issue. I have to say there are 5 DWIs in my lifetime, and not proud of that, and not going for a state record or anything like that. But I will tell you that every time I had one of those, and I always was in that denial place that I was totally fine. I'm totally fine, dude. I remember once I'm walking out of a bar, and I was like trying to find my car, and I finally found it, and I'm like, whoa, I am not walking very well. I should really get in my car and sit down, and then probably get home as quickly as I can, because I am a danger to everyone being out here. And you know what? I don't want to bother anybody like the cops, so I'm just gonna leave my lights off and drive as fast as I can and get home, and then everyone will be fine. And much like you, the police didn't laugh at that. It was a so that's part of the problem is that I always go through this, and we'll talk to Dustin tonight, Dustin Chapman, about some of these issues, and it's going to be interesting. And then later on, musical guest Breanne from Duluth. She's jumping online and going to play a couple songs for us tonight. Very exciting. I always feel like an idiot when I feel like I've just met somebody for the first time, and then they tell me about the 2 other times, not once, but 2 other specific dates and what the weather was and everything like that. And I'm like, wow, what a memory. And I just feel such a goofball when I can't remember some of these things. I'm hearing my echo in there. So that's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to catch you over at the desk here in a minute. We're going to have a word from one of our fine commercial sponsors. And then we'll be back here with more of Seriously Mental. Stick around.
It's okay to think you're in a toxic relationship with the world right now.
It's okay to feel like your world is changing.
It's okay if it's hard to find the words to express how you feel.
It's okay to feel like you just want to become someone else.
It's okay if you're panicking over an inability to control your life right now.
It's okay to have trouble maintaining your normal routine while staying home.
It's okay if you're feeling more cynical than usual.
It's okay if you want to curse more than you usually do.
It's okay to wear your favorite tank top several days in a row.
It's okay to miss your job.
It's okay to just stay quiet.
It's okay to be depressed.
It's okay to talk to your cats like they understand what you're saying.
It's okay not to feel the most fabulous right now.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
There it is. Going. I'm going to have to just hold it with my leg up here, I think. Oh, okay. You know, we'd like to thank Nami for that last commercial there. Make it okay. Yeah, I'm trying to hold it here. There's something in the mic. We'd like to find a sponsor so we could buy a new $7 lavalier microphone. I think you can get them now in gumball machines where little toys are, like those bouncy balls and stuff. Try that one? Okay. And this doesn't guarantee anything will get any better. If two shows have gone by where we haven't B9 B9 Hey, welcome to Professional. Hi, how are you? Awesome. Yeah. I'm going to run this like a tie right down the front here. How's that? Can you get any louder? Should I be louder, people? Please write in. Hey, we're on YouTube and Facebook right now. Totally mucking that up. And we'd love it if you join us there. I'm not even putting the shirt on now. Who knows? Might be coming off later. Just made our guests very nervous. Okay. Hey, thanks for sticking in there while I did a little acrobats there. Hey, I want to check in on our star. If you remember from episode 2, we had purchased that on the National Star Registry with a coupon from Groupon, and it was half off. And see, those are the kind of things I do for myself for self-care. I get a good deal, and this just happened to be on PL 321I. And so we named it, we're going to name that too, just like the Arnolds that came by a couple of weeks ago. So as I stated earlier, let me know when we're ready to start the show though, Gabriel, because I think all the levels are good.
Ray says no shirt off.
No shirt off. We're already getting requests. Okay,
oh boy.
Donations. People are making donations for me to keep my shirt on. I like that. I swear, get a 20 in here, I will take this thing off. I know some of you people just ate. No one wants to see that. Okay. Hey, want to thank Gabriel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you introduce our new friend in the booth there with you too tonight? Can you do that?
Another mic.
Yes, we got Gary Wick.
Gary Wick is with us tonight, which, you know, there's always so much serendipity. Gary came to work on in the control room today, and sure enough, was it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or something like that, Gary? About 50 years ago, he knew our guest tonight, Dustin, from a workplace. It'll be up to them to discuss that, but I thought that was kind of cool. So small world, and so we're going to have that discussion about addiction and those kind of things. I talk about my own drinking now much more openly, and drug use much more openly than ever, because I'm trying to do that with everything now. And you know, I think after I'd explained it to my kids and stuff like that, then it was like, I don't mind telling anybody else. Once I've let my kids know, they're like, oh man, that's what it was. But in defense of alcohol, I've done some pretty stupid stuff sober, so we can't blame it all on alcohol for me. But is the dog okay? We have a new mascot. Somebody asked us about if the mascot was going to be here tonight. She just ran into the green screen because it looked like an exit.
No, you gave her the empty bottle.
Come here, Millie.
I can't come up there.
You're my mascot. No, stay where you are. I think the mascot now is going to hang out with her. That should be exciting. Summer's here. Gabriel, did you hear that?
What's that?
Summer's here and the time is right.
Yes, it is.
So,
yeah. How was your week, Ben? Did you have a great time this week?
Much like last week and the week before that, I had some great times and I had some times that I'd rather not recall. But all in all, I would say we averaged out better than average. Went to my daughter's last night to have pizza outside and play bags. Oh, got my butt kicked in bags by the youngsters. And so that's off my list of self-care because I realized I got pretty darn fired up over that bags game. And they're basically bags with beans in them or something like that you throw around. And I was like, and it makes my ears red and all that, and we can't go there. So, anytime we could start now. So why don't we go to a commercial, and then when we come back, we'll actually go live and start doing the show. Does that work?
That sounds good.
All right, cool. It's good talking to you, though. Thanks, bud. We'll see you in another minute or so. On Seriously, Matt. Oh. Who's playing? And Gary, if you can give us an all clear.
As we weather the COVID-19 pandemic, remember to not only take care of your physical health, but also your mental health. The pandemic news and uncertainty can trigger feelings of loneliness, despair, and hopelessness. You might also feel irritable or on edge, especially given all the changes that have occurred in a short period of time. Good self-care is the key to reduce anxiety and keep your spirits high. While so many of our normal activities are disrupted, practice kindness. Be patient with your loved ones. Eat healthy. Avoid turning to addictive substances. Get enough sleep and move. Physical exercise is good for mind and body. You will feel better for it. Let's fight COVID-19 together.
We had been planning a hiking trip to Yosemite for the longest time, and last week she wasn't even excited to go.
She kept telling me how much she loved me and saying goodbye like I was never going to see her again.
She even started dressing differently, like she didn't care how she looked anymore. She even gave me some of her favorite clothes.
I knew something was different. She stopped turning in her assignments, and she started skipping class.
When I talked to my little girl, she just wasn't the same. It was like I didn't know who she was anymore.
The signs were there.
I didn't know the signs.
We didn't see the signs.
I will call someone.
We will find help.
I will ask the tough questions.
I will see the signs.
Everyone has a part to play in preventing suicide. For more information, or if you would like to speak to someone about yourself, a friend, or loved one, call Counseling and Psychological Services at 510-642-9494. For more information about counseling, health, and wellness services through the Tang Center, please visit the Tang website at uhs.berkeley.edu. You can help save a life. You can learn how to help someone overcome, endure, transform, and become greater than their suffering. Know the signs, ask the tough questions, and find help.
To Seriously Mental. Welcome back to Seriously Mental. Because I heard seriously and mental. Yeah, this sounds a lot better, I think. Ask somebody out there if anyone thinks I'm talking too loud or anything. But hi. Hi, this is your sportscaster Chet Butley here, bringing you the latest in mental health stories. That's right. We've worked out our technical difficulty for now until I start a new one. And with that, I'm going to get us right into our first guest tonight. Very glad to have this gentleman here, somebody I've had the opportunity now to work with over the past couple of years in providing mental health first aid classes. We've teamed up many times, studios around the Midwest for some interesting audiences at times. He is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and a really funny guy as well, and a big music lover, and I think that's why we get along. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his career in recovery, his own journey, and then just ask him some questions about what is going on in the world of recovery right now. So would you please welcome licensed alcohol and drug counselor Dustin Chapman. There's our audience of one. Hey, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good.
Good. He's over there on the socially distanced couch.
Yep.
All by himself.
Fully vaxxed.
Fully vaxxed. You're vaxxed. I'm vaxxed. This is awesome. We could actually hug later.
Yeah.
And we might. So stick around. No. Hey, how are you, Dustin? You were good up until that moment.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, so we were talking a little earlier about what were we going to talk about, and I said when we do mental health first aid classes together, and it's always cool when you do them with somebody new, and the first time that we got to do them together, I got a message from him, and he's like, just pick whatever sections you want. And he said, I'll take the alcohol and drug section, and I was like, I love alcohol and drug section, and then I heard him tell his story and talk about it, and I was like, oh, that is very good. And so I just have always loved how you've shared both and very nicely when I talk about or use terminology that might be out of favor. You help me understand, much like I try and do with mental health for people,
Sure.
Some of the alcohol terminology and recovery terminology.
Yeah.
Because it changes.
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of the change comes about because we've learned so much more about alcoholism and drug addiction just in the last 20 years. And so much of what we've learned has to do with what we've learned about the brain.
About the brain. Yeah.
About the brain.
About the brain.
I can see you. Can you see me? It just... I think what we've learned about the brain and what we've learned about addiction in the brain has brought us to a point where we really have to reframe how we look at addiction. And, forever, alcoholism and drug addiction have been viewed as escapes, as an escape, as a crutch, as a way of numbing. But it's always in the context of something has happened, and so an individual turns to alcohol or drugs to cope.
Sure.
I think that one of the biggest stumbling blocks to recovery is stigma. And I think when we look at addiction as an escape, in a way we're stigmatizing, because we're essentially saying an individual is weak, that they can't handle stress, they can't handle pressure, they can't handle life problems that people that don't have addiction seem to handle with ease. So, the notion that I think is that somehow people with addiction are weak and are fragile, and I don't believe that that's true. I think that, with what we've learned about the brain, we know that the introduction of alcohol or drugs to the brain, especially the underdeveloped brain of a child or adolescent, really affects how that initial experience with drugs affects them. And so, for example, if a 14-year-old, which is about the average age of first use in the United States, smokes weed or has alcohol, they experience a tremendous euphoric experience. And this euphoric experience is unnatural. It's intense, but it's unnatural. It's not going to happen through natural activities. And one of the results of the initial drug use is a surge of dopamine in the brain, which causes feelings of pleasure. The other thing dopamine does is it's a key ingredient to the formation of memory. And so for an adolescent or a pre-adolescent, that memory that is recorded in the brain as the result of that first euphoric experience is indelible. It's there forever. And so there's that desire then to repeat that good feeling. One of the words that I really like, that I think describes addiction, is the word dysregulation. The brain becomes dysregulated with continued substance use. And it's this dysregulation that causes the brain to react to stresses in life, to difficulties in life, or to positive things in life with urges then to use alcohol or another drug. I read an article a couple months ago by a psychologist who wrote a book on the brain, and this article had nothing to do with addiction. It was actually about changing behavior. But in this article, she talked about how the brain formulates responses based on prediction. It makes predictions based on previous experience. And the example she gave, I thought, was incredible. And the example she gave is thirst. So if I'm dehydrated, my brain sends a sensation to me of thirst, telling me that I need to drink water. So I drink water, and that sensation of thirst stops. However, it takes about 20 minutes for my body to actually become rehydrated. But based on previous experience of drinking water, my brain makes the prediction that my thirst will cease because I will be rehydrated, so it stops sending the sensation of thirst. Well, if you take that same premise and apply it to addiction, the brain has learned through early use about the euphoric experience that makes us feel good. And so if I have a period where things aren't going good, or I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or something goes wrong in my life, or something goes really wonderful, my brain, based on experience, predicts that alcohol or drug will make me feel better. And so that's really, I think, what happens with addiction. And so I think, in a nutshell, what I'm saying is I think it's really important we start looking at addiction as a dysregulation of the brain. If I have cancer, if I have lung cancer, people are going to think about my lung. If I have cardiac disease, they're going to think about my heart. But if I have alcoholism, they think about me as a whole person. And I don't mean that in a holistic health way. I mean it in a judgment way, that they judge my whole person based on the fact that I have alcoholism or a mental illness.
Like you're all broken, not just your heart or your liver.
Yeah. That the whole exactly. And I really think in order to overcome the stigma of addiction and to better understand and better treat addiction, we have to really start looking at it as a dysregulation of an organ, just as we would look at cancer affecting an organ or diabetes affecting an organ. So it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and we talk about that from the mental health standpoint too, is that we have to see these as diseases just like, and give them the same parity, which is a word that I've learned over the past few years in doing this kind of work, is that there's not parity, both on how they're looked at from insurance standpoints or recognition of something that you are having a tough time with, and is an illness, but is also something you can recover from.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good news is your brain gets dysregulated by alcohol or drug use, but it can re-regulate itself. It's just that it takes time. But even from a treatment standpoint, I think it's easier for patients in a treatment program to understand or grab hold of the idea that their brain needs to recover, and that time is their best friend. And the most important thing is to buy themselves time so their brain can recover. Now, a recovery time for your brain, it happens over different periods of time, but to get fully functional, I think on average it's 5 to 7 years. So how do you buy yourself that 5 to 7 years? Well, a lot of the tried and true kinds of things that have been recommended for decades fall into play there. But I think it's important for patients to understand these activities, whether it's going to meetings, getting a sponsor, working the steps, staying out of bars, staying away from people using drugs, actually helps your brain heal. It teaches the brain new things, it creates new wiring in the brain, and all of that is extremely important to the brain recovery.
So one thing I want to talk about, because you make a great point about how this early rush of dopamine, this early brain chemistry change can initiate substance use disorder as its own animal.
Yeah.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk to you about how it plays an added role for people like me who have a dual diagnosis, or people who came from trauma, and what that might have done. So we're going to be right back with more with Dustin Chapman after this word from our sponsor. Stick around for more seriously metal. I'm gonna wet that whistle while
We must slow the spread of COVID-19 to protect our communities. Right now, it is important to wash your hands often, get tested if you have symptoms, stay 6 feet away from other people, wear a mask when you go out, stay home when you can, and work from home when able. Thank you for doing your part. Stay safe, Minnesota.
1 in 4 of us will be affected by mental illness at some point in our lives. Yet nearly 2/3 of us will never seek help, especially men. We pride ourselves on courage and our ability to never show weakness. But mental health touches us all. We are athletes, actors, and musicians. We are friends, husbands, and fathers. It's one of us, it's one of you. It's time for men to talk about mental health. Help starts with the conversation. End the stigma. To learn more about our stories, visit bringchangetomind.org.
That's right. Bring change to mind. That's love those commercials. Before the break, we were talking with Dustin Chapman, licensed alcohol and drug counselor. And one thing I do want to talk about the trauma part of it, but I want to double back, and I want to remember to get back to the trauma part. How the heck did you get into this? I mean, this is one of those jobs that I often thought, well, these people must really have had their own issues, and then thought, I will teach others how not to have my failures in life. But the point is, I always felt more respect for somebody who maybe had some lived experience, as opposed to somebody who just, I read all this in a book, and now I'm going to tell you about what your life means.
No. Well, I grew up in the 60s. My childhood was in the 50s, but my coming of age was in the 60s, so I consider myself a member of the Woodstock generation. And, I just was enthralled with all of the social change that was going on in the 60s. And, Jimi Hendrix, bell bottoms, long hair. Hey, sign me up. And marijuana was a part of that. And I actually smoked marijuana before I ever drank, because my father had alcoholism, and I'd promised my mom I wouldn't drink till I was an adult. But she didn't say anything about marijuana. So I don't know. It was probably about 1968, maybe 69, the first time I smoked weed, and not much happened. I didn't really have much of an experience with it. But I remember being an adolescent, being 16, 17 years old, and there was that thrill of just having done something that was risky and I shouldn't be doing. And you have to understand that marijuana in 1968 had a whole different connotation with society than it does today. And, so there was that risk of getting caught and consequences and penalties, but also, knowing that I did this and no one else knew. Mm-hmm. There was power in that. So I really liked all of that. And then I think it was maybe the second time I smoked, I'll never forget it. I had an incredible euphoric experience, and it was something else. And I was on a lunch break at school. I was a senior, I think, and went back to school. And right from the very first time, I had consequences, because I was so out of it that I went up to people that were my friends and just said the most outrageous and hurtful kinds of things. And, but I didn't, the high was so great. I just loved it. And then I drank for the first time at my senior graduation party. And like I said, I'd promised my mom I wouldn't drink till I was an adult. I was 18, so legally I was an adult. But the legal drinking age was 21, so I used adolescent logic and said, well, I'm an adult. I'm keeping my promise. But I remember that just the first time I drank, it was a very different high than marijuana, but I really liked it. And within a matter of months, I was smoking multiple times a day, drinking probably 2 to 4 times a week, and drinking a lot. And the thing that I realized about drinking is once I started, I couldn't stop. And marijuana was throughout the day, every day. I remember I was actually telling a friend, I was remembering, it was Valentine's Day, I think it was 1970. And I was going to take my girlfriend out. We were going to go out, and I took for the first time LSD. And I was in no shape to go anywhere. And I don't remember if I called her and bowed out of our date or if I just didn't show up. But, it's like for me, every time I used, almost right away there were consequences, but they weren't the type of consequences that would get me to do anything different or to even scare me or to think that there was anything wrong with this. And I had a bad experience on LSD. I'd done it a number of times, and the experience was so bad I thought about killing myself. And I actually formulated a plan. I made a noose out of a coat hanger and was going to hang myself in the closet. But I had this moment of clarity, this moment of sanity, where I was at my parents' house, and I knew they would find me, and I thought, I can't do that to them. I'll wait. And when I get home tomorrow, if I still feel this way, I can always do it then. Mm. And the effects of the LSD wore off. But as a result of that, I developed a panic disorder. But my use continued. And one of the things I always struggled with is I didn't have blatant outward consequences. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get DWIs. I didn't get fired from jobs. Then I started thinking about it. I thought, oh man, I never got arrested, but how many times was I guilty of driving under the influence? Oh yeah, and there was that time that the cop pulled me over but decided to just let me go. And there was that time when the 3 highway patrolmen pulled me over because a truck driver saw me smoking a joint, and fortunately I didn't have anything more on me, so they couldn't find anything, so they didn't arrest me. Oh yeah, and then there were all those jobs where I was so loaded I just didn't show up for work, and I knew I'd get fired, so I didn't go in so they could fire me. But I told myself I never got fired and I never got arrested. But I had some, I did. So, but anyway, so I just reached a point where my panic attacks were so severe, my self-esteem, I was afraid all the time, and I finally made the connection between drinking and marijuana, and I knew I had to quit. And treatment wasn't an option. This was 1973. Treatment back then, you had programs like St. Mary's, which was called St. Mary's Alcohol Treatment Program. So they took people with alcoholism, but they wouldn't take people that used drugs. In terms of drug treatment, there were programs like Farmhouse and Eden House, but they were more geared for people using heroin or speed, as it was termed back then. They weren't interested in some kid that smoked weed, took some LSD, and drank. So so I got counseling, and through a series of miracles in my life, I stopped using, and I wanted to get a job. I wanted to get a job at working in a laundry, like at a hotel or something like that, because it paid like $3 an hour, and you could live pretty good on $3 an hour. And I ended up applying for a job at St. Mary's Hospital. In their laundry, and they said, we don't have a job in our laundry, but we have a job at our alcohol treatment unit for an alcohol unit assistant. So I took the job, and I was scared to death. I knew nothing about any of this stuff. I'd been involved in my dad's treatment, and I did know some things about alcoholism because of his history, but I knew nothing about treatment. And oh man, it was so confrontive back then. I swear if people did that kind of stuff in treatment today, there'd be not only lawsuits but assault charges. It was pretty brutal. But anyway, I went back to school and did a lot of my training at a place called Hartview in Mandan, North Dakota. And yeah, so that's...
We do have a question.
Okay.
We've got a question from online.
The Facebook. How about coping with pain, not euphoric, but just coping with pain? Pressing pain, hiding the issues so you can just relax. And let me finish it. I have to go to the next one. Levels the pain, not that it's to get drunk or blackout drunk, but just calming relief.
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Yeah, so we reiterate that for anybody who didn't hear that. Question was utilizing it as a coping mechanism for pain.
The question doesn't say whether it's physical or emotional, but the way it's worded, I'm going to just take it as physical pain. And that's a really good question. And a lot of people who have chronic physical pain will get some relief from drinking or smoking marijuana or maybe using some other drugs. And the thing of it is that you may experience some relief from the physical pain with alcohol or other drugs, but there's a condition called hyperalgesia, and this is a condition that comes about where the alcohol or the drugs actually increase sensitivity to pain. So they actually, initially it may feel like it's helping, but the end result is that it actually increases sensitivity to pain. We see this too with people that have legitimate prescription for opiates. After a while, the opiates don't really work and the pain actually increases. So, and I think, the same would hold true with emotional pain. That that drugs and alcohol may numb the pain, but in actuality, they're making it worse. They're like an emotion amplifier that actually makes it worse. So they really, I understand when someone says it helps, but I think that legitimately it's causing harm, and there's better ways to deal with it.
Kind of muddies the water. I think for me, I definitely noticed that I created another, a whole nother set of issues in trying to deal with one set of issues. My emotional pain. So that can be really, really backs it up. Let me ask you this. So we talk about trauma, and how that can lead to the same exact situation you were just talking about. This last year, I just hearing something on NPR yesterday about the increase. They're beginning to get numbers over this past year of during the pandemic, during everything that has kind of come because of that. Big increase in opioid overdoses, big increase in binge drinking. I guess when you leave alcohol, the liquor stores as an essential service, that sends a certain message to people. Maybe that's how I'm going to take care of this whole COVID thing. I'm just going to drink my way through it. But what do you see as what we should be looking for coming out of a period like this for both kids and adults?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I have a pat answer for that, but I think that with what we've been through with COVID, and it really came on suddenly. I mean, we first started hearing about it in December of 19, and within a few months we were on shutdown and isolation, and it was so sudden. People started losing jobs as businesses closed, so there was financial stress. And, I think that in those situations, people will drink more. It's something to do. It occupies time. It can make me feel better. I think, all of those things happen. Working in treatment, there have been a number of people who've re-entered treatment. They had reoccurrences of their alcoholism or their substance use disorder because they were stressed with just having nothing to do or worrying about finances, being isolated. Their meetings weren't taking place. Connection with other people wasn't there. And again, referencing back what I said earlier about a dysregulated brain, the brain responds with, let's get high. I think
we have a little extra one added on to the Facebook one, which is basically they're talking about definitely an emotional, and how, and basically why emotionally does it work that way instead of not necessarily physical.
Why does it with emotional pain? Why does the type of self-medicating? Why doesn't it help?
Okay, why does it help?
Why doesn't it help?
Basically, why doesn't it? And
okay.
Why does it, numbing type of thing.
Well, I would argue that it in the long run, it doesn't help. It gives the sense of relief because you're high.
You said it's easy calming.
Yeah, but the way again that alcohol or drugs affect the brain, it actually over time increases those emotions and those painful feelings. Let me give an example. Let me use grief as an example. Everybody experiences grief. We all experience grief in some form or another. And I look at grief as natural grief and unnatural. So natural grief would be like, I'm 55 years old and my parent dies. That's a natural aspect of life. But I have grief around that, and I have memories. I have to deal with anniversaries that come along, maybe happy memories, sad memories. But I go through a grieving process that helps me deal with my grief. Unnatural grief would be something like a child dies, or my parent dies, but I'm 8 years old. That's different. That has more ramifications. It's a disruption in life. It's not part of the natural flow of things. And so someone who experiences unnatural grief may have need for counseling, maybe even periodically for most of their life. When we're drinking or using drugs, we're not capable of processing that grief. It can't happen. So if say a parent died, and it was a part of that natural flow of life, and I have alcoholism, and my parent died 10 years ago, it might as well have been 10 minutes ago, because I haven't been able to process that, and so that grief is very much alive inside of me because the alcohol or the drugs prevented me from processing grief. So, that's why I say that alcohol and drugs may provide a temporary relief, but they actually exacerbate the pain.
Hopefully that brought some understanding to that point. Boy, we could sit and talk about this stuff for hours on end, Dustin, and what I'd like to do is have you back. So as things develop, I want to make you our go-to voice to talk to us about what's going on with addiction and recovery, and maybe help us broaden our look at that from an organizational standpoint. That'd be great. So if you do have questions, do continue to type those and send them in. We will have those answered for you either later in the show or afterwards online. We're going to take a quick commercial break and then come back with tonight's musical guest, Breanne. Stick around.
You have served our country and made us proud. Many of you are still serving. Some of you have come home to our communities where you continue to lead and contribute. Some have come back from deployment to find new challenges at home. Every family can have challenges. In or out of uniform, we need you to continue to serve and help your battle buddies, families, and communities. It's important that we all learn the 5 signs of emotional suffering: personality change, agitation, withdrawal, poor self-care, and hopelessness. If you or someone you know is experiencing one or more of these signs, reach out and offer to help. I reached out for the support I needed, and it made all the difference. This is how we keep our units, our families, and our nation strong. Visit changedirection.org.
Your first album? We're up. Hi, how are you? Welcome back to Seriously Mental. Did I get that number right? 15. No, I'll have her tell us. Here's me not writing the intro down. I'm so glad, as I brought up in the intro today, when I talked about somebody who I met, who I thought was the first time, who had I met not once but twice before, and did not remember that immediately, especially this young lady, who is so delightful. But from Duluth, I'd like you to welcome our friend Breanne Marie Tepler. Maybe you know her from Breanne Marie and the Front Porch Sinners. There she is, right now. How are you?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Why don't you say a few words to the people there, Breanne?
Test, test. Hello, can you hear me?
Thumbs up. I'm not hearing her, young man. If you know she's up, you can hear her. Okay. All right, they can hear you.
All right.
Great. So how are you?
I am well. How are you,
Good.
Chris?
Now, I was trying to bring up the date of when you'd recorded for the first time in relationship to tying it into our discussion we were having about grief. And I was going to use your story as kind of your intro, but are you comfortable sharing with us kind of what led up to that first time you decided to put some of that stuff down?
Absolutely. And thank you, Dustin, for just cueing me in on the subject of grief, because that is wonderful. 2006, my father died by suicide. In 2007, I picked up a guitar to claw my way out of the depression that I was in around that loss, that unnatural grief, as you say. And then I started writing my own music. And then my brother Tim died in a car accident at the age of 26. And that was 2009. And then I started writing even more, and I had enough to make my first album. So I did that in 2013, and that's when my band was born.
Wow. And I'd like you to, play your first song, and then we can talk a little bit more about that, because it's a lot of stuff to then bring to the table and talk about being vulnerable and personal and things like that, and how that plays into your music. So, please, everyone, for your listening pleasure, Breanne Marie.
Awesome. Okay, this first song is called "Too Tired to Cry," and it's on our new album, Juniper. Chasing ghosts again this week, looking for you in my sleep. Went all the places we would go, like that pawn shop downtown. The one with all the old guitars in the park on Masaba Avenue. Maybe I wouldn't be so weak, standing here unable to speak. Trip around the sun, another year of memories made. Wasn't ready for goodbye. I woke up out of you just to keep you alive. I drove 150 miles to go back in time, but it's too cold to snow today, and even though I tried, I woke up and thought of you just to keep you alive. I drove 150 miles to go back in time, but it's too cold to snow today, and even though I've tried, too tired.
Wow, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I had you singing to me and Millie here. Millie's our new mascot here at the Heart Mind Connection.
Aww.
So, thank you so much. That was gorgeous.
Thank you.
Can you tell us? So we have time for another song, but give me a brief idea. What is your process for writing both solo stuff and then things you maybe will come up with the band?
Yeah, I do almost everything before I take it to the band. So everything is a brand new little baby song, as my friend Sarah Morris would call it. Everything's a skeleton. And I've been changing how I write about grief over the years, because I've been processing the grief differently over the years. In the last year, I've been in therapy for the first time in my life. I'm seeing a grief therapist. And how I approach that processing is different. And that's coming out in the writing. It's a little less raw, or as you would say, no bloody horror stories, right? In the beginning, that's what you say in your trainings. And in the beginning, I would write a lot of those pirate bloody stories. And then I moved away from that and processed different points or parts of that grief. And so that's, I mentioned my dad and my brother Tim, but in 2018, my other brother Justin, my last surviving brother, died in an ATV accident. So I had 3 immediate family member losses in the last, 15 years. So I will continue to process this grief, and I'll keep writing about this topic because it's what I've been doing, and yeah.
Yeah, I think I talked with somebody else who had been on the show before, a musician, about early songwriting, and I just remember all mine were just like so sappy about 16-year-old love, like gone bad. It was like, oh. But to take the things that are personal about us and really to bring those both to something that brings us joy and to help us process feelings we've had, that is so powerful. So we really appreciate having you here. We'd love to get one more song out of you.
Yep, I'll do one more. And this song is about depression. I'm a bipolar 2 is my current diagnosis. And by the time I was 17 years old, had gone through 9 of the 10 major ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. So this song I wrote for myself and for my mother, and it's sort of a mantra of what you would say when you're feeling down, when you're having a hard time, or whatever words you want to use to describe it. I call it hard time. So that's the name of the song. Looks like another hard time in a month, season so great. If I could find a reason to try, I might get up and do something today. There's always a reason to smile. There's twice as many to break down. If you just hold me for a while, make this world stop spinning around and let it go. Let it go. Let it be away. Let it go. I've had a lot of hard times, but I feel this one deep in my bones. It's a feeling I just can't shake. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I'm cold. If I could take 2 steps ahead, I'm sure if all these 3 lines, you would just lift me up, carry me for miles and miles, and let it go. Let it fall. Let it be away. Let it go off my back. And for just once, ease my pain. Ease my pain. Let it go. Let it fall. Let it be away. Let it go.
the song there. I think. Oh, there she is. Oh my gosh.
My back.
It froze up for a second, right when you got done, and I was like, "Oh, how did you do that?" It's like on fade out. It was amazing. Thank you. That was beautiful. Will we be catching you this summer, God willing, with things opening back up, being around the state, maybe down in the city sometime? I think she's smiling yes.
So
she
we'll be
can't
playing in the
answer
cities and
quite,
live streams.
Just taking the water away from the dog. We hope to see you down in the cities. We'd love to see you and the whole band. Look for information about Breanne Marie and the Front Porch Sinners at breannemarie.com. And I want to also thank my other guest, licensed alcohol and drug counselor and winner of a What Would It Look Like If Bruce Dern and Clint Eastwood Had a Baby contest. It's Dustin Chapman. Thank you so much. Remember, out there, we appreciate you watching. You are not alone, and help is only a call away. See you next week. Bye.
Ha ha ha.